So between two houses, you should have 15 feet as a minimum setback. The applicant has submitted a variance request to reduce that to 5 yards or 5 feet from the side yard. So in other words, you'd have 10 feet between the houses potentially. And I want to talk about variances just for a minute. A variance is only granted in the case of a hardship. The hardship that they have indicated here is that they want to build a larger house on the property. So I'm not sure that's really a true hardship. Hardship is, in my interpretation of a hardship, is something that you can't avoid because of some condition. For instance, you have a steep slope or something, and because of the steep slope, you can't put the house closer to it, so you have to move it further away and you might get closer to another house. In that case, that would be a hardship that is reasonable and can be addressed through a variance. They're asking for this variance on every lot in the subdivision, every undeveloped lot. The other thing I want to point out with regard to Brach Park subdivision, it was developed under an R14 zoning originally, which was, the R14 zoning was removed from our zoning ordinance back in 2013 or so. And all the properties in R14 were rezoned to R20. All right, so the current, okay, so that's just have that in the back of your mind, but the R20 district requires 15-foot side yard setback, or for the houses. So technically speaking, you should never have a house closer than 30 feet from another house, right? In the current zoning. Now, this zoning that this was approved in and the final plat was developed in allows for a 15-foot separation. So they're already half of what the current zoning allows. So just wanted to give you that as a background before you consider the variance application that was requested. The other thing I would say about the variance application is a variance is by parcel. In other words, each individual parcel would be allowed to request a variance, not a blanket over every parcel under one application. So technically, the applicant should have submitted a variance application for each and every parcel that he thought needed a variance. So that technically wasn't done correctly, so we can only act on one variance or one variance request because that was all that was technically applied for, if that makes sense. So each variance, there's a fee. You know, obviously, anytime you submit a variance application to the city, they charge a fee, and I understand why they're asking for a blanket over all the parcels, but it is an individual thing, and the variance goes with an individual piece of property, not with an entirety of the subdivision. So that is the background. That's the report and my evaluation of the application for the variance. Obviously, the applicant has not showed up in support of this application. The staff recommendation, which is me to you guys, my recommendation is denial of the application because it does not rise to the level of the definition of a variance, and it does not have a hardship. There's no hardship created by having the zoning currently as it is. And the third thing I would raise is the fact that as you compress houses closer and closer together, it becomes harder and harder to fight fires, if that makes sense. So it becomes not that there's any issue with fire protection, but it does make firefighting tougher when the houses are closer together and there's a potential for fires to jump from one house to the next to the next. So on those based on those issues, recommendation from staff is denial of the variance application. I'm happy to answer any questions or if there are any about it.
Is this guy already, is this applicant already paid the $250 fee?
They paid, yes, they submitted a variance application. My opinion is they submitted it incorrectly from the standpoint that it should only been for one parcel, not
But they didn't
for.
specify one. Right?
No, they asked for the whole thing, but we can only act on one of the many. I wouldn't even, I would say whatever our action is really true of one or all.
Seems like to me, I rode through there, and seems like to me if you do put them any closer together than what they are now, what you were talking about a while ago about changes of level from house to house, and not being able to get too close, they're going to make it worse.
They're creating a problem that currently exists, but
It
potentially could, right?
will create more of a problem
Yeah.
because of the elevation change throughout that subdivision.
Yeah, that's a good observation as well, is there would be creating conditions where you have to have retaining walls in effect to change the grade or elevations between the properties. Joe brought up a point, we discussed this during out of session last month. We discussed the fact that the home builder is saying that he wants to build a larger house on the property. Okay, why can't he go deep instead of wide? He wants to build a wider house. Well, he could do that. He could accomplish the increase in square foot by going deeper.
There are several homes there that are already that way.
Right. So there is a cure for what he's asking for that he is in full control of. Where I don't know the reasoning behind wanting to go wider rather than deeper. Other than maybe that's the building plan that he has. So again, I mean, it's one of these situations. I wish the applicant was here to speak in favor of it, but my recommendation to the commission would be to deny the request based on it doesn't have the criteria for variances met.
You know, since it's been rezoned to R20, and which would be a total of 30 feet, but since when it was built, it was in the old zoning, so that's variance right there. I mean, which, you know, that already been taken care of, the house is already there.
Yeah, that's right.
So, I mean, at least they called it, you know, like the grandfather clause. So why? I don't see any hardship for as reducing it to you know, a total of 10 feet. So I agree. You know, remain like it is. I deny the request. I don't see where it's in the hardship.
The motion.
I'm asking. I was just making a statement to the committee.
Yes.
So, is there any more questions that add? Okay, so we've heard it's been submitted. So now we'll take it to the vote. All in favor?
Well, the motion, I guess the motion would be, and it would have to come from Brenda or Danny. The motion would be along the lines of whether you are approving the recommendation for, or approving the variance application or denying. So if denial, are you here for the builder?
Yes.
Application?
Yes, for Brach Park?
Okay, yeah, sure. Would you like to come and speak in favor of the application?
Sure.
We're about to act on it.
Oh, okay. I thought the meeting started at 6:30, I'm sorry.
6 p.m.
Okay. Good evening. Hope you guys are doing okay. It's a little cold outside.
Yeah. What's your name, sir?
Neil Coble.
Okay.
My office is at 2422 on Country Club Drive in Stockbridge, Georgia.
Okay. All right, sir. So we've looked at this application.
Yes, sir.
We've had a discussion about it. To bring you up to speed, there's a few things that have been discussed. One is the fact that the original zoning for this property had, and the original plat for this property had the buildings at a 7.5 foot or 15 foot building spacing.
Right.
The application for variance is to reduce that to 10 feet
Yes,
between
sir.
the buildings. That the reasons given in the application were you just want to build a bigger house on the property. A couple things to note is the current zoning for the property, which is the zoning when it was originally platted is different now than it was when it was platted. It was platted under R14 district, which was eliminated by the city some years ago. But it has the setback requirement or setbacks of 7.5 feet from the property line for side yard, which is allowed. The current zoning it's in, though, R20 has a 15-foot side yard setback. I know we're not going to require that, obviously, so we'll live with the 7.5 foot. But the question is, the commissioners were discussing the fact that a larger house could be accomplished by making it deeper as opposed to wider. And so the questions like that come to mind. Also concerns about elevation change between the parcels. There's some slope there, and if you make the houses closer together, you end up with having to have retaining walls and such as that to accomplish the grade change. But that kind of brings you up to speed on our discussion, but I'd like to hear from you in terms of the application.
Sure, yeah. Well, this project, I don't know what date that was originally platted, when this project all started. But it's been through, of course, the most recent recession. And as you guys know, all the national studies and the state studies say that the housing is in short order. Lots, people are needing housing. You didn't say what year that was?
2003.
Yeah. So the project's been sitting there unsuccessful since 2003. And it's time to move on, basically. I think that it would benefit the city to have a builder in there that's active. And there's a reason that it hasn't been purchased by other builders, even though the recovery has been going on for at least 3 years very strongly now. The part of the problem that we're seeing in the marketplace right now is when you say the houses could be bigger by doing a deeper house, that is true. It's something that we've considered. But part of the thing that we're running into with customers is they're still a little bit used to the old recession prices where they're asking for a little fancier front on the homes. They're asking for a little more substantial look to the front of the elevation. And so when you go out to Brach Park, for instance, there's nothing wrong with the community, but it is a lot of narrow shotgun type looking houses, and the market just has not accepted that. Hence you still have a subdivision that's been sitting there since 2003 that is not getting any taxes. It's just a maintenance upkeep on all the streets and the infrastructure that's in there. And we're wanting to just, we don't own the lots. We're under agreement to purchase those from the person that owns it now, who, if I understand correctly, was somebody that got it out of foreclosure, and they're trying to move on with the subdivision. So that's our biggest intent, is to try to just get these last, I think it's 24 lots out of the subdivision built and productive, not just an eyesore, not just having grass there that gets overgrown at times and mice and snakes and everything else that the neighbors call and complain about. But we would just like to get the subdivision started and be able to offer a product that consumers want these days. I brought a couple of plans for you guys to see of what we'd like to offer in the community. If I can hand these out to you guys. one of the two-story houses. And then we wanted to build a ranch planted here as well.
Yeah, drawings showing the houses like beside each other and the spacing that you're proposing versus the spacing that is currently allowed.
I don't have a drawing. We have not gone out there to topo the property yet because we don't have it completely under control as far as owning it and all, but we will. We have looked at the kind of a lot fit plan of how those are 50-foot average lots. These houses range anywhere from 38 feet wide to 40. So that's not even much, 38-foot wide house to 40. That's already somewhat narrow, but we will have a topography done out there so we can measure the slopes and then set the house up on the lot accordingly to make sure they drain, etc. We'll have an engineer do a plan for us.
In the city zoning ordinance, variances are discussed. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but variances are issued on the basis of hardship.
Mm-hmm.
So describe the hardship.
Yeah, I think it's just an economic hardship that's evident by everything else in Coweta County that has, like I just said, has moved on. And you've got a project that's still sitting here 15 years later that hasn't done anything. And part of it, the reason is because, again, there's builders out there trying to buy lots all over the place right now. It's a very hot market. It's a very desirable market, but this thing hasn't moved, and we're one of the few people that have stepped up to try to buy it from the current owner, and try to work with the city to where we can get just a little wider house on the lots that the market is demanding right now. It all comes down to economics. If this thing was a viable project, it would have, I promise you, it would have already been built on. People are not only have the recession lots. Not only are they gone, but people are starting to develop. As you guys drive around, you'll see new developments in Clayton, Henry, Fayette, Coweta, but here this one still sits vacant. So it's a lot of trouble to develop, and it takes a lot of cost to develop. So I think that the hardship bears itself out in the fact that it's not really a economically viable project right now.
So all right, so talking about the economic hardship, that's not one of the criteria for issuing a variance.
Mm-hmm.
As an economic hardship. So let me ask you this, have y'all considered combining lots? If you want a wider lot, you could maybe reconfigure the plat to allow for the space that is permitted here, maybe lose a lot in the process, but you would still be able to build the size house that you're looking to build.
Well, all the infrastructure is in, so I mean, rearranging the lots, I don't think with the road in is a feasible, obtainable idea either. With the sewer already being divided up, the water already being divided up, just trying to use the lots that sit there, and just a couple extra feet makes the whole project work. The difference of overall is not a substantial ask to be able to get a community up and going again.
You guys have any other questions?
The houses, the existing houses.
Yes, sir.
What's the size of those versus the houses here that what we have in front of us?
They're a little. Some of them are very, very narrow, especially in the cul-de-sacs and some of the radiuses. I mean, there's a house out there that is, if you come in, turn to the right, that's on the corner. I mean, the whole front of the house is just, it's like, it looks like it's 20 feet wide, and it's kind of oddly stacked, and you have to drive way around. So square footage wise, will be a little bigger than what is out there right now, as far as what I can tell. And we'll be able to build a more traditional looking houses instead of this shotgun deep house that really doesn't has a lot of lacking in curb appeal, which is one of the reasons that buyers aren't buying those type of houses right now. I also think that a lot of those houses out there are, all vinyl siding, and we're willing to look at doing some hardy plank houses out there. So we're not trying to take away from the standards at all. We're trying to get a good lot price and have a nice house. They've had some foreclosures and some other things in there, and every community has that you're trying to restart. But we would just like to see it become a viable project again. Again, it's 15 years old. If that doesn't say the project doesn't work, I wouldn't know what else would. It's been sitting there for 15 years, incompleted.
So your request for that is a 24 units, right?
Yes, sir.
So what if you will go by the standard, which is a total of 15 feet? What would that reduce the quantity of house building? Would it be 22 or 21? Have you considered that?
No, like I was just saying, it's not my project, so I don't really have the authority to speak on behalf of the person that owns it to say we can start redividing up lots and tearing sewer out of the ground and capping sewer and water and all that kind of stuff. We just want to go from 7.5 foot side setback to a 5. So it's 2.5 feet on either side of the house. What we're asking for to make the project work is really, again, it's pretty insignificant to try to get 2.5 feet on either side of the house in order to complete a project that's been sitting there for 15 years. I mean, it's been sitting there 15 years. It's time to let us build a traditional house in there and finish up that project and get something on the tax roll.
Have you spoken with anybody in the subdivision? What you proposing here? Have you spoken with any residents?
I have not spoken with any residents. I did talk to the developer, and I've been in contact with the city manager to see if there was any feedback from the advertisement that was placed, and we haven't received any inquiries or any calls up here. I've reached out to see if there's been any input from anybody, and there's not been. But I think that most of the time, I've had a lot of experience in finishing up subdivisions that were in the recession, and most of the time, people are tired of vacant lots that have, mice and snakes and rats and everything else that take residence on them. They want to see their subdivisions completed. And building a little wider house is something that's you would think was favorable for the community. If we were trying to do smaller, narrower houses, that's usually where the rub comes in with people. But when we're trying to just take 2.5 feet on either side and build a nice, bigger house with a good bit of road frontage, that's that's as an improvement to the community.
Clay, what do you have any questions?
I still have the same problems that we did before, which is if you start making the houses wider and you reduce that area between the two houses, access to the back sides of these houses is gone. If you go over there now, they have the 7.5 feet, and there's barely room for a drive to go between them, and that'll be taken completely away. Another thing that I have a concern with is people that currently live there and bought those homes on those lots with the regulation the way it is, or the way it was at the time, knowing that those homes won't change. And if you take a lot that's next to one of them and put a house closer than what they had when they bought theirs, then they're gonna be coming to us going, what in the world are you people thinking? This is not what we wanted when we bought here. you know?
Yeah.
You're gonna have those problems.
Yeah, we'll have some problems. I would only say that I also think when they bought there, they didn't think they'd have a half-built subdivision for 15 years.
I really don't believe those people care that much. I mean, I've been through there and it doesn't look that bad to me.
Well, I mean, the developer is currently mowing it all, but at some point, all that's gonna be turned over to the HOA. And when you have a community that has a ballpark and the entrance and all that, you need 100% participation in an HOA to maintain the subdivision for longevity's purpose. So, at some point, you are gonna intersect a point where there's not enough people in the community. Right now, you have a good developer, who's out there. He did recently cut the lots and that type thing, trying to keep it maintained, but he's not gonna do that forever. And then they're not gonna be able to keep, the best thing for the community is to get it finished up and not have vacant lots. That's why, you know, the subdivision is there. You guys could use the taxes and the help with the maintenance, and you know, it's like I said, it's a project that's been sitting there 15 years unfinished. So a mistake was made. Let's correct it and finish up the community.
What mistake are you talking about?
Well, I'm just saying there's no, I mean, a 15-year project to build, I don't know, is there 70 lots in there?
Whatever it is.
72.
Yeah. I mean, that's a long time. It's just been sitting there.
But, and I think it goes back to the zoning that was in place when this thing was developed. I believe this was an R14. I may be wrong. It may have been a PUD. But regardless of what it was, the R14 district had more narrow lots, and you know, that was obviously taken out of the zoning and in favor of the R20 district, which has a little bit larger lot.